time at the end of our session to get to those questions. So never fear. I am super curious to know who is here. So maybe as folks are joining, if I could ask you all to just like do a quick introduction in the chat, your name, pronouns, and maybe what's something that you're looking for from this session. That would also just really help me make sure that I really focus on your questions and try to answer. So let me give you all a second to put this in the chat. And as you're doing that, I should introduce myself. So again, my name is Sideri. I am the Senior Program Manager at the Dream.us. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Dream.us in just a second. I'm based out of Chicago. Looking out my window, the storm is coming. I hope you all are in a safe and warm place right now. And just thank you so much for joining us. My background is in higher education. Before joining the Dream.us, I spent about 8.5, close to 9 years at the University of Chicago, working with first generation, lower income, undocumented students and students of color. And then before that, I did a lot of work in the nonprofit world with similar communities, and working with undocumented students has also been something that I'm just deeply passionate about and just so grateful that I get to do on a regular basis with the Dream.us. Okay, awesome. It looks like we have some input in the chat. Let me take a look. Okay, so it looks like, yes, questions about how to support undocumented students as they transfer in admissions. Yes, additional resources students get use on your campus. Hopefully, I'll point to some good stuff there. Resources to share with your students. Absolutely. Yes. Hey, yes, absolutely. Resources to share. Okay, how to help them make their dreams possible. Perfect. Okay, I hope that I'll get to all of this. I'll definitely circle back to your points as we move along. Okay, so let me just go ahead and get started. So the Dream.us, we are a national organization, even though I'm based out of Chicago, but we're a national, and we provide scholarships to undocumented students, and that includes students with or without DACA and students with or without TPS. And I'll tell you more about what that means in just a second. We to date have awarded about 7,500 scholarships. We have more than 2,100 students who have graduated college with our award, and they are in more than 19 states and across more than 70 partner colleges. And our goal really is just to increase the number of awards and the number of graduates who complete their bachelor's with our scholarship. And so part of our model to get to that goal really hinges heavily on our partner colleges. And so partner colleges are the institutions who basically have an agreement with us. We're working with them closely on the scholars that receive our award. So our scholarship is only good at our partner colleges. And that's something that's really important for you to remember, especially as you're talking about to transfer students about their options. In Illinois, I believe we have 9 partner colleges, and I was actually just looking at the number. I think it's 9, it might be 10. And on our website, you can see the map, and I can share the link in the chat in just a second. But basically, one of the main things that I would love for you to keep in mind as you're talking to scholars about this scholarship is that they do have to select and be admitted to one of our partner colleges in order to receive the award. And we do so because we know that the student experience for undocumented students is really different than from other student populations. And so the partner colleges we work with have not only made the commitment to take our scholarship, but also made the commitment to have staff on their campuses at different offices to support our students, to make sure that they're identifying any potential barriers that are getting in the way, and also to address the opportunities that might come for our students. And that model has worked really great for us. So as of today, we have a 94% first year persistence rate, overall 86%, and our students have an average GPA of 3.4 on a 4.0 scale. So we're super proud of these outcomes, and we know that we couldn't do it without our partner colleges. And I also wanted to let you know that our scholarship is currently open, which is, I was so excited about the dates for this presentation because I could still tell you in time about our scholarship for this upcoming academic year. So we have two main scholarships. The one that's really relevant for today is a national scholarship. The other one is opportunity, but that's only really for a select group of students from out of town. So that I didn't feel like would apply too much to our conversation today in Illinois. But if you have questions, if you do have students or family members coming from out of town, feel free to contact me directly and I can tell you more about opportunity. But for our purposes today, the National Scholarship is closing at the end of this month, February 28th. It basically provides a full ride, full tuition and fees, again, to our partner colleges for a student's bachelor's degree. It's up to $31,000. They also get a $500 stipend that they can use for whatever they want. I know some of our students use it for cell phones, some use it for books, transportation, it's really up to them. Students who are transferring from a community college to a four-year to complete their bachelor's get up to $31,000. High school graduates who are going directly into a four-year get up to $37,000. And the links for the application, we have an application guide, are here on this slide, and I'll share this information with April so you have all of these links following. But basically, the students would make an account online and then fill out their application there. I'll go over the criteria really quickly. So for our community college graduates, we have main questions around immigration status. So we will ask them when they arrived and the age they arrived. So they will have to have arrived in the United States before November 1st, 2016. And before the age of 16. These two are pretty set. We are not flexible on this eligibility criteria. So please make a note of them. I know we've had a lot of questions from students about this. I know I just spoke with a student who was 20 years old at the age of arrival. So unfortunately, we couldn't extend the scholarship to him, but those are our main sort of immigration related criteria. And then we ask about academics. So for community college graduates, we ask for a 3.0 GPA or higher. If they happen to be eligible for the RISE Act for in-state tuition, we do ask them to apply. But again, this is one of those questions where our partner colleges really do help students apply for that and obtain that additional financial aid. And they have to be admitted and enroll full-time at a partner college by next academic year. So again, really quickly, students do not have to have DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival. We mainly just ask around the date of arrival and age of arrival when it comes to immigration eligibility. So I know I was going to tell you a little bit more about who are undocumented and TPS holders. So I'm sure a lot of you know this, but you'll see we use the term dreamers in our communications, and this is a term that usually means undocumented immigrants who came to this country at a really young age. We usually think of dreamers as youth or young adults, so college age is usually the default there. And they either have or don't have DACA, and even if they do, it's not permanent immigration status. Now, students who might be TPS holders are in a separate immigration category, that's temporary protected status. This is set by the federal government, and it's set up by country. So usually, if there's a natural disaster in a foreign country, the US government might choose to extend temporary protected status to individuals from that country so they can leave, relocate here until they rebuild. But that's also why it's called temporary, because it can end at any point. Some of you might have followed the news about TPS for Haiti not too long ago, where the program is either extended or suspended. And so it can cause a lot of stress for families, for students with this status, because it could end at any point. So these are our main student populations. Overall, based on national data, there are about 98,000 students who graduate from high school each year who we would consider undocumented. This number is from a few years ago, so estimates are definitely a little bit higher, but this is the one where we actually have hard data to share, so that's what we're using at this point. And then most of our students do happen to be first-generation college students and come from lower income backgrounds, but that's not always the case. Okay, so I'm gonna take a pause here, and I'm gonna ask someone from the audience to ask me a question before I move on to the next section. It could be anything, or it can be a clarifying question about any of the information I've had so far.
I probably missed it on the previous slide, but I want to ask you, in order for a student to qualify for this scholarship, does the student has to complete an associate degree, or can they just meet the credits in order for them to transfer and they can still apply?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I'm not mistaken, and I will have to double check, is they don't have to have an associate's. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But I will double check and definitely get back to you. As long as they're ready to complete their bachelor's, that's okay. Thanks for that question. Let me see, there might be something. Okay, we have another question in the chat. How does TPS status end? What's the criteria for status ending? That's a great question. So it's basically up to the US government, depending on the reasons for extending temporary status in the first place, they can also determine when to end it. So again, in the example of a national disaster, it might be, I don't know, maybe like 5 years later, and that country was able to rebuild enough to the point where the US government determines that it's safe for people to go back. That might be a criteria for them to terminate TPS status, but it's really, up to their government. I don't actually have a lot of students with TPS, so I can't really tell you in further detail, but it's basically that. And sometimes it can totally seem arbitrary to some of our students or people with that status. So it can be kind of stressful. Thanks for that question. Okay. So then I wanted to also share about our scholar experience when it comes to transfer. So all of this information is specifically to our transfer students. So today, we have 1,519 students who've been awarded our scholarship as transfer students. 755, so just about half of them have graduated with a bachelor's degree. A little under half are currently scholars, so they're still in school trying to finish their degree. 124 have maxed out or timed out, which for us means we have a set amount of time and we have a set amount of money. As I mentioned, 31,000 for community college graduates. And if for whatever reason they don't complete their degree, they will either have maxed out their award or timed out their award. So that means that they can still continue, but we cannot track their progress because they're no longer considered our scholars. And 207 of them have had other sort of changes in their student status. So some of them, their immigration status might have changed, and so they no longer need our scholarship, or may change schools. So 207 of them are in this other category. And throughout the years, this is how transfer students have enrolled in our partner colleges. So as you can see, academic year 2015, under 100 students. Our highest year was 2019, where we had 282 transfer students. 2020, we saw a significant decline, but I'm sure that was true of a lot of you here as well. And we're seeing our enrollments increase. Hopefully this year too, once our round closes, we'll see a higher number than last year, because we just want to make sure that we give our scholarship out as much as possible. Overall, for all of our transfer students, we have an 82% a 3-year graduation rate, and that's the sort of time limit we have for transfer students, a 3-year. And we have a 93% persistence rate at our 4-year community college. So these numbers are really great. Our transfer students do amazingly. But of course, there were some really significant barriers that have happened because of the pandemic and because of other related issues in the last couple of years that I wanted to share with you. So our scholars reported that 33% of them lost their jobs because of the pandemic. 30% of them report worsened physical or mental health. 83 of them have families whose job was affected. And so that could mean parents or extended family members had reduced hours, were temporarily or permanently laid off. And so that oftentimes meant that our students had to pick up some of those wages. 52% of our students are in essential industries. A lot of our students go into healthcare. A lot of them are in teaching as well. And then this is really striking to me. 1 in 3 of them reported a decreased confidence in their ability to graduate on time. So that was just really directly related to the pandemic. But then, of course, in 2020 and to a lesser extent in 2021, there were also challenges related to immigration that impacted our students. So of course, the Supreme Court issued a decision on the termination of Daca. Just a quick note, we are still sort of in limbo with where Daca stands. As of today, no new applications are being received or processed, only renewals. And so what that ends up meaning for our students and incoming classes is that more and more of them will not be able to have a DACA, will not be able to have a social security number or work authorization. And that's really throwing a wrench into a lot of their plans. Again, there was a lot of discussion about extension or termination of some TPS orders. And then this is really important. There was a group of researchers out of the University of California Collaborative that put together a report. And what they found is that immigration status really does impact students' well-being and academics, not simply, all of the other things that come related to immigration status. What they found was that 50% of the students surveyed reported thinking about their parents, guardians, family members' deportation or potential deportation at least once a week or more. And so what this ultimately means is that they're just really distracted by some really serious concerns that all of our other students don't have as they're going through their academic journey. And that can just take a huge toll and can really impact their academics. And then, of course, there were so many things going on as well when it related to civil unrest. There was a lot of incivility, a lot of anti-Asian and anti-Black sentiment. Of course, our scholars identify as part of these groups. And of course, the recent threats to our HBCU partner colleges is just really alarming. And so thinking specifically about our transfer students, I did want to point out a few additional challenges that I'm sure you all know, but I just wanted to put it out there just to get us on the same page. So when it comes to the academics, the biggest area of challenges are, of course, when it comes to obtaining transcripts and also understanding how much or how many of their credits will transfer over to the new school. In addition to this, one of the biggest areas of challenges we see with our transfer students is just understanding the major that they've chosen or choosing a major. We have students who are even in their third year still undecided or changing their majors, and that can be that can just really slow down a student's progress. What we end up seeing a lot when it comes to the transfer process is that students might not realize there are prerequisites to the degree they want to pursue at their new school, and they knew nothing about it before their transfer. The major they want might not be there exactly as how they were thinking. I was actually just speaking with a student who wants to go into education, transfer recently, but the program at the new school is really focused on early childhood education, and this student was thinking of a different route. So just aligning those expectations more directly is definitely an opportunity there. And then, of course, sometimes the major that they want is just not even offered. And that happens a lot with students in our world who want to go into nursing. That's definitely another industry where we see some of these issues. And so what that ends up meaning for us with our scholarship is that our students either max out, they run out of funds, or they time out, they run out of time with our scholarship, and then they have to finish their degree on their own, which is definitely not something we want to see happen. Another challenge is in the sort of professional and social arena, and this is definitely one I wanted to chat a lot more with you about, is the internship and professional licenses. So what we see for a lot of our transfer students is that the number of internships they pursue before transferring is pretty low. Some of them, have to work throughout their college degree for various reasons, and either do not have time for an internship or haven't even really given it the thought to try to make it work. What we also know from our graduates and their success is that internships play a huge role in their post-graduation outcomes and their ability for them to secure good jobs or just to really decide on their career paths. And so that's definitely something I wanted to point out for you, is even just speaking with them about pursuing an internship and the fields they're interested in, especially if they're undecided. That just really helps them clarify their goals. The other area I really wanted to highlight is around professional licenses. So professional licenses are basically, licenses, certifications that certain industries require in order for you to be able to practice. The two examples I have here are nursing and education, just because those are like the main ones our scholars are pursuing and where those licenses are required. But, there are plenty of other professions that require a license. But this is definitely a challenge. What I see quite a bit is that students, have their major, they've transferred, their credits are done, they're getting ready to graduate though, and then they realize that they need a social security number, or their profession requires US citizenship in order to obtain that license. And if our students don't have that, a lot of them don't have social security numbers, they won't be able to obtain that license and then practice the career that they trained for. And then, of course, there's also the social challenges of coming into a new school, finding new staff, and new ways for students to connect. So let me pause there, and I'm going to ask for a couple of folks to maybe share, are you seeing any of these things on campus?
And then if anybody wants to put it in the chat, respond to the chat, or unmute yourself too, feel free to do so.
So I did want to kind of highlight, I work at St. Xavier University, and we do have a lot of undocumented students, both coming in from high schools and also from community colleges or other areas of like transferring in. And I did think that it was very interesting that you highlighted that one of the things that was noticed was that many of these students are not 100% aware of like the prerequisites and of because they kind of come in, it seems, and this is also just general transfer students as well, but more so the students that are coming from that first generation background where they're not maybe 100% aware of like what is needed. But it was very interesting because like it was one of those things where I noticed that being a thing, but until you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, that is a thing that really happens, because there are a lot of students that look at the requirements and they think that that's all they need. It's just the admission requirements. But then they come in and they're like, oh wait, I got to start and like actually pursue the prerequisite courses. And I wasn't 100% aware of that. And I think that is interesting that they come in and they're not aware of many of the the requirements that are non-admission, that they need to prepare themselves to be able to go into their field and to be able to take those classes that are needed for their major. And a lot of times they don't even know much about the major itself. Like you said, it is very interesting. And I think that was very interesting because that's one of those things that I kind of noticed, but it didn't quite hit me until you talked about it today. So.
Oh, thanks for sharing it. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I remember just speaking not too long ago with a student who was going into STEM, and exactly what you said, right? Like did all the admissions requirements perfectly, started classes, and then was told that essentially you have about an extra semester of prerequisites. And it came as a huge shock. Not only does it take additional time, but it just, for this student that I'm thinking about in particular, it just really soured his relationship with the institution. We tried to repair it, of course, but that was just really, really interesting to see. So I'm glad that resonated with you, because it's something that we can, we're definitely trying to address on our end. And I hope it's, a quick fix for all of you on your campus. Really quickly, before I keep moving on, I did want to circle back on the question about community college graduates being eligible. I do want to confirm that yes, so community college students, in order to be eligible for the scholarship, do have to either have graduated with an AA or be about to, we simply ask that they have their AA by the time that they would start the following academic year with the scholarship. So in this instance, for this year, for this round, they will have to have that completed by the time fall of 2020 begins. I hope that clarifies. I apologize. I didn't know exactly who asked me that question, but I did want to just really clarify before moving on. Okay. So there was a lot of discussion about challenges, but there are a lot of promising practices that I do want to highlight, and I'm sure so many of these already happen on your campus. So these are mainly around the 2020/2021 timeline, but they're still active right now. So as far as addressing the pandemic, what we did as an organization is extended emergency funds. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we simply extended emergency funds, to students. We knew they weren't going to be eligible to receive some of the federal aid that was coming through for college students. So we just sent those out. However, 2021 and into 2022, what we've found to some of the DACA issues I mentioned earlier was that a lot of our students were also losing their jobs because they weren't able to renew their DACA, which meant they couldn't renew their work authorization. And so what we did was extend emergency funds for students who lost their job because they couldn't renew their DACA. So that was definitely something that was super effective. We sort of expanded our what we call break in enrollment. So special circumstances where students have to take a break from school and from the scholarship. And then we just created more ways for the students to connect with us and ask questions and connect with each other. As far as addressing immigration challenges, what we've implemented is just referral to free or low cost legal resources. I am a big fan of having students meet with an immigration attorney at least once a year to review their cases, simply because the laws change so much. Advanced parole might be something that can really benefit a student. Different sort of policies come into play at all times. So that's something we continue to do. We offer monthly sessions with an immigration attorney where students can come in and ask any type of question. We also provide funds for students who want to renew their DACA. It costs about $495, and that can be a pretty large price tag for a lot of our students. And then we communicate and provide updates around immigration related topics on a regular basis. And then when it comes to addressing some of the challenges from civil unrest, we just really acknowledge the activism that our students are doing and uplifted the aspirational capital they're already coming to college, to us with, and then also provided opportunities for them to share more of what they were feeling, how they were coping with a lot of the different challenges at large with us through listening sessions. Okay, I'm gonna just pause really quickly. I feel like there might be a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if somebody wants to just unmute themselves and ask their question, or if you want me to wait until the end. Okay, maybe I'll come back to this at the end. So as far as academic promising practices, again, because we have this really close relationship with our partner colleges, I wanted to highlight what 3 of our partner colleges are doing. So CBU, Christian Brothers University, has a 3-tier academic plan that every single one of their students has to develop and then implement in tandem with their counselor. And this includes transfer students. So they'll come in and they'll say, I forget exactly all the tiers, but it's basically like, depending on how quickly students want to complete their degree, they map it out and then they're given an explicit timeline of what classes they need to take and when, an exploration of their majors. So far, CBU students have been just doing really, really great with those models. I also wanted to point out Miami-Dade to Florida International University, FIU, does have an explicit relationship when it comes to transferring students from one institution to the other. And they created transfer guides where students can look to see a lot of these questions around credits, majors, requirements, but that also are used once the student begins the transfer process and as they're finishing their degree. And that actually is also really similar to what NOVA is doing for students who are transferring to a 4-year, is that they also created transfer guides that students can, sort of self-serve, but that also are there for their counselors to use with them as they're starting to explore their options. This is hyperlinked, so when you get the slides, you'll see it, but I also wanted to share the work where you can maybe take a quick look around professions that require licensing and certification based on your state. The President's Alliance on Immigration and Higher Education has created a portal where you can see what these requirements are, what the policies are per state. And so I will just really quickly, I don't know if I can copy this while I'm in presentation. I'll try to put it in the chat so you all can take a look. But again, it will be in the slides. Okay, there we go. In the slides that I share with you all. And this is, again, one of those areas where it all sort of ties together, knowing what potential requirements might be there for students once they graduate can also just help us as we're talking to them about majors, credits, and transfer. And then finally, there was also a recent publication of a joint entities, AACRAO, ACE, and then CHEA around best practices on credits and issuing transcripts. And again, this is linked, but I'm sure you've all seen it. So I just wanted to highlight really quickly that additional resource. And then when it comes to professional and social promising practices, I wanted to highlight Dominican University, based here in Illinois, is doing a really great job with what they call NEBOs, which are non-employment based opportunity. So this is a way where they're able to provide funding for any student, regardless of immigration status, to pursue an internship. And so essentially this means any student will be able to have those experiences, have a true internship, be able to just do more of that exploration about their careers or interests, and still be able to get a stipend, because that is ultimately one of the main reasons our students don't pursue internships, is because they already have to work and they can't take an unpaid internship that's often required of students. And then I also wanted to highlight North Park University, again, here in Illinois. What they do really well when it comes to social integration is that they have a cohort model for our students, and that includes transfer students into North Park. And they have a first-year course where all of our Dreamer students take together, they attend together, they have social activities together, and just get really immersed into the social world of North Park. And so far, we've seen just really great outcomes. Students really feel a sense of belonging and have also this help-seeking behavior that we like to promote in our students for their success. So those are just a few of the best practices I wanted to share, but I'll pause here to just ask again, maybe if a couple of folks want to share, is there anything from these promising practices that you feel could be implemented on your campus or that you're already doing and you want to highlight for the rest of the group?
And also, this is a time where you can put questions or responses in the chat, or also feel free to unmute yourself. We do have about 7-8 minutes for questions as well.
I think one of the practices that you highlighted was that of like transfer guides, which SXU actually does implement some transfer guides for local community colleges in the area, such as like Moraine city colleges, but it's really only for like the local region. So I do think it would be interesting if we could potentially get some transfer guides for community colleges that might not be just within the local area. If it's kind of like a community college that is somewhere in the city of Chicago that is not, specific to the region that we're currently in. But the guides are very useful in being able to like send these out to students and be able to kind of like get that input as far as like, so these guides will be able to provide you information as far as like what prerequisites are needed and what classes you have to take at those schools. So it's a really good tool that we try to like provide the students as much as possible. And I really hope that we continue building those agreements with other schools as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I think that's a great question, right? Like there are some of these guides that are institution specific, but what happens to those that are not? So I would definitely say if your students are transferring to some of our partner colleges, definitely let me know, because we also ask students to be really thorough in the questions they ask their future school before they even transfer. So thank you for that. And yeah, that's, I think, an amazing opportunity, right? Like, can we think about a broader guide or broader collaborations across institutions in the region just to make that transfer easier? Okay, perfect. And it looks like, yeah, somebody shared in the chat that there are transfer guides and guaranteed admissions agreements with institutions in Illinois. Perfect. And then there's also a link they can send to undocumented students with external resources and other tools. That's great. Yes, I will put my email in the chat if you want to follow up directly. But at this point, let me just open it up for questions just in general for any of the topics about the scholarship, about the practices. What else do you want to know? Okay, where can I find the list of institutions? Yes, so the website is, let me try to grab it. Okay, so here's our website. The list of partner colleges are on the website. You can search by state as well. Yes, another question, how do institutions initiate partnership? Short answer is we usually do that. We will do an internal assessment of regional needs and trends. How many potential students are there in a particular city, region, region or area, what institutions are there as well. And then usually what happens is that our president, Candy Marshall, will reach out to the institution directly. If you want your institution to be on our radar, the best bet is to contact Candy Marshall. And you can always email me and I can make the introduction, or you can email her directly. I'm pretty sure our emails are on our website, but if not, you can just let me know. Yes, and community colleges can be partner institutions. Yep, that's a good question. Okay, I'm gonna look through earlier chat just to see if there are any questions there, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask anything as I'm sort of quickly reading through.
One of the questions that just popped up in the chat at the end, what occupations are best for those with or without a social security number?
That is a huge question. I would say it just, a lot of it depends. Illinois does have expanded licensing requirements. And I believe that change happened in 2019. So it's been a recent development. So a lot more students are able to get those licenses even without a social security number. So I would definitely say check on that portal I shared earlier in the chat just to see about different state requirements. But as far as occupations, I would say for someone without social security number is to stay away from anything that requires that asks for that. So some of those occupations are usually the ones that require a background check, like a lot of education or healthcare. But again, it just really depends on what specifically the individual is interested in, what state, what city. So I would just say, a lot of it just depends on where the student is. But Illinois tends to be, or is starting to be, a lot more friendly when it comes to that piece. I wonder if the person who asked that could be more specific. Is there like a particular occupation that you have in mind or that you've seen your students have questions about?
Maybe not. Maybe sometimes it's like we don't know what question to start with. So
I totally get it.
Yeah, her bringing that up was like, oh, that's a really good question to ask. Like, I wouldn't even know where to start. So
yeah. And it's a tricky one because so a lot of students make it work. So I definitely don't want to like say these are like no-go institutions, because there are ways, but feel free to contact me later on if there are any more specifics. I just found something in the chat from earlier that says I work with parents, and one of their main concerns is about not having a social security number. They refrain from encouraging their children because at the end, whether they graduate or not, they won't have a social security number to work. That's a huge challenge. But I think, again, the recommendations I have for these type of conversations, either with parents or sometimes with students themselves who don't have a social security number, who don't have work authorization, is that first of all, consult with an immigration attorney about your options for status adjustment. As I shared earlier, immigration law changes quite a bit. We, as the general public, probably don't hear about it because it's, really detailed legalese, but immigration attorneys are up to date on all of those little tiny changes that just might open the door for you. So I would always urge individuals to do a consultation before They think their options are completely gone. The other thing about it too is that laws themselves are changing so much. So even before DACA, there wasn't anything like it. And then it's been around for 10 years now. So, there are other, other opportunities that might be coming down the pipeline. There might be other options for students to pursue their careers or their dreams. So I would definitely try not to limit students or the family members thinking that they shouldn't even consider a college education, because you could do a lot. It might not be clear at this exact moment, but there will be options for you in the future. But I know that's such a tricky conversation to have. Okay, so I know we're getting close to time. I will do one final check for questions, and if not, maybe we can end our session 5 minutes before the hour. Anything else?
I saw, I don't know, Kenneth Guthrie had their hand ups. I don't know if
okay.
there's still a question, but we can definitely take one more and then have everybody head out.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Can you hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's been really just informative, and I love it. So I guess my question revolves around communication, and gaining the trust of these students and humanizing that experience instead of making like this counselor, whether that be high school counselor or college counselor, like relationships so transcriptive. And so I guess I'm wondering maybe like what forms of communication or like ways of conversation starters have you heard of as successful? For example, I know at Columbia, when we're reaching out and encouraging students that are eligible to fill out the FAFSA, we also encourage students who might not be eligible to reach out to us like via phone call or, to reach out to us personally with any questions so we can start that conversation. But that's really all that I think we have right now. And outside of that, I'm just wondering if you have heard of anything else.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's actually great. And it's something I've talked about in previous presentations, but I left it out today. As far as communication pieces, I mean, the one that I feel like, might be redundant, but we definitely encourage you not to use the I word, illegal. So if there are any places in your institutions or, in old documents where that's there, definitely take it out. That just signals a non-welcoming environment for students and their family members. Being explicit, right? I like your example because filling out FAFSA is definitely one of those times that could be pretty stressful for undocumented students. So what I would suggest in your example is actually just in that communication, put the information there, right? If you are a US citizen or legal permanent resident, fill out the FAFSA. If you are not, if you are undocumented, fill out the alternative, institutional application and just be explicit in your communications. Of course, encourage students to come to you with one-on-one questions. That's always great. But even just putting it out there signals to students that you are, what you're talking about, right? That this could be a question, that you also understand that there needs to be a different process. So even in that, it's okay to be explicit and put the information out there, along with, all of the other communications that you're sending out. And then, of course, just sharing, again, just really explicit information on your website so that students don't have to guess. Put it that you are an undocumented student ally, that you are trying to be an undocumented friendly campus and what that means to you. I know some counselors have a signature in their emails that say similar things as well. And, if you do have additional resources on your campus, just really highlight them. So those are just like a quick additional suggestions I have. Okay. April, do you think we're good to end it there?
Yeah, this was amazing. I think everybody got a lot out of it. Super helpful. I know I'm going to be contacting you with some questions myself for the high school side of things. So thank you everyone for being a part of this session. The next session meeting should be opening up. So feel free to head to the two-way sessions, either supporting transfer students through Golden Apple Scholars, and then recruiting veteran students to your campus. Thank you all so much. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Likewise, thanks so much for your help.
Bye.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good evening.
Bye.